Ethan Moore wasn't supposed to be here. Not with her. Not tonight. He'd spent years living behind glass walls, boardrooms, penthouses, and silent dinners where laughter felt bought, not born. But when his company sponsored a community kitchen that evening, he noticed her. Lily, a teenage girl serving soup with quiet dedication, her eyes holding the kind of strength poverty couldn't steal. He didn't know why he asked her to dinner. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something in her smile reminded him of a life he'd forgotten. When the black car arrived to pick her up, Lily hesitated at the door. "I'm not dressed for places like that," she whispered. The driver smiled gently. "Mr. Moore said you don't need to be. He just wants your company." Now, under the warm restaurant light, she tried to keep her hand steady as she looked around. The silverware gleamed. The piano played a song she'd never heard. Her stomach fluttered, not from hunger, but from disbelief. Ethan noticed a discomfort and set his phone aside, a rare act for him. "You like pasta?" he asked softly. She nodded. Never had the real kind. Only the one from the corner store. He smiled. "Then tonight, you will have the best." The waiter brought the dish, and Lily stared at the delicate swirl of noodles and steam. She whispered, "It's beautiful." Ethan leaned back, studying her. "You remind me of someone I used to be." Lily looked up. "Rich?" she said with a shy laugh. He shook his head. "Hungry, but not for food." For the first time in years, Ethan laughed, not because of her words, but because of how she made them sound like truth. The table between them no longer felt like a divide between two worlds, just two people who somehow understood each other's quiet. As the night unfolded, she told him about her part-time jobs, her little brother who dreamed of becoming a doctor, and her mother's old notebook filled with recipes she couldn't afford to make. Ethan listened, really listened. Then she paused, her voice softening. "Why me, sir? Why invite someone like me?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because sometimes strangers remind us what it means to be human." The restaurant lights dimmed slightly as a pianist shifted to a slower tune. Lily smiled for the first time that night, not out of politeness, but from something deeper, something that felt like being seen. And in that fragile moment, two worlds touched, one dripping in wealth, the other surviving on hope. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Red Hot Hash. As the dinner continued, Ethan found himself forgetting his title, his millions, his board meetings. He asked about her dreams instead. Lily told him she wanted to study someday, not to escape poverty, but to become someone who can help. He smiled faintly. "You already are helping. You helped me remember something I lost." When the plates were cleared, Lily excused herself for a moment. Ethan noticed a way to return with a folded note, placing it beside his wine glass. "The young lady asked me to give you this, so..." He unfolded it slowly. A few lines written in careful handwriting changed everything. "Thank you for treating me like I belong. I can't pay for this dinner, but I hope you'll let me repay you someday by making someone else feel seen too." Ethan's vision blurred. His throat tightened. For the first time in years, the man who had everything felt something money couldn't buy. The pianist kept playing softly, unaware that in the corner of the golden-lit restaurant, a billionaire had just been undone by a poor girl's note. Ethan sat there long after Lily had gone, the folded note trembling between his fingers. The restaurant staff moved quietly around him, resetting tables and dimming lights, but he barely noticed. Her words kept echoing. "Thank you for treating me like I belong." He had heard 1,000 voices flatter him, beg him, curse him, but never that. Never gratitude so simple. It stripped him bare. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the city's pulse beat steady and indifferent. Ethan walked out into the night air, letting the drizzle kiss his face like a baptism. For the first time in years, he felt small, and it felt right. He told himself he'd never see her again. Just a fleeting dinner, a strange evening of humanity in a life ruled by deals and deadlines. But fate has a way of haunting hearts that are beginning to heal. A week later, his assistant, Grace, entered his office holding a newspaper. "Sir, you might want to see this." The headline read, "Teen volunteer hospitalized after collapse at shelter." Her picture, Lily's picture, stared back at him, pale but smiling weakly from a hospital bed. Ethan froze. She was working double shifts, Grace murmured. Exhaustion, they said. Malnutrition, too. He didn't reply. He just stood, the note from that night flashing again in his mind. I hope you'll let me repay you someday, by making someone else feel seen, too. By the time Grace looked up, Ethan was already gone. He arrived at the hospital within the hour, a place he'd only ever donated to, never entered. The white walls smelled of disinfectant and quiet suffering. Nurses whispered when they saw him, recognizing the billionaire on every magazine cover. Room 214. He knocked softly. Lily's mother, weary and kind-eyed, opened the door. "Oh, Mr. Moore," she said, startled. "Lily talks about you." He smiled faintly. "How is she?" "She's resting. The doctor says she'll be okay if she eats properly, but—" She trailed off, embarrassed. "We've been struggling. Rent, medicine." Ethan's gaze softened. "You don't have to explain." He stepped closer to the bed. Lily lay there, a tangle of 4 tubes and fragile breaths. But when her eyes fluttered open and saw him, she smiled. "You came." He pulled a chair beside her. "I read about what happened. You scared me." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to. I just didn't want to stop helping." Her voice cracked, and Ethan reached for her hand, careful, steady. "You don't have to prove anything, Lily. You've already done enough." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "No, sir, I haven't. I want to open a small place someday, for kids like my brother. A little cafe, maybe, where they can eat and study." Ethan chuckled softly. "That's quite a dream." "It's not about the cafe," she said quietly. "It's about belonging." Her words sank deep. He thought about his empty mansion, the long marble halls echoing with silence. Belonging. He'd built empires, but never that. As the heart monitor hummed softly, Ethan found himself making a decision he hadn't planned. "Lily," he said, "when you're better, I want to help. Not charity, partnership." Her eyes widened. "You mean like a job?" He nodded. "A start. You handle the heart, I'll handle the funds." Tears shimmered at the corner of her lashes. "Why are you being so kind to me?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Because you reminded me that kindness isn't something you schedule, it's something you feel." "Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would?" "Right, yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think." "Rose." The next few weeks blurred into routine visits. Ethan brought food, flowers, sometimes even jokes that made Lily laugh despite the hospital smell. Grace began helping the family find better housing, and Ethan quietly covered the bills under a different name. He told no one. For once, it wasn't about being seen. One afternoon, Lily's younger brother, Noah, ran up to him in the hallway. "Sir, Lily says you're her guardian angel." Ethan laughed softly, kneeling to his height. "I'm just a friend, Noah." The boy shook his head. "No, angels help without asking." Ethan's throat tightened. Children had a way of telling the truth adults forget how to say. That night, back in his penthouse, Ethan stood by the window again, staring at the endless skyline. He thought about Lily's dream, a cafe for those who had nothing yet still wanted to give. For the first time, his wealth felt useful. He opened his laptop, searched for properties in her neighborhood, and began drafting plans. Not for another skyscraper, but for a small cafe tucked between laughter and hope. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. Sparkles. But fate, as gentle as it can be, also tests the sincerity of our promises. 2 months later, the cafe space was ready. Soft lights, wooden tables, a corner bookshelf stacked with second-hand stories. A sign above the door read, "Lily's Place, warm meals, open hearts." Ethan wanted it to be a surprise. But the day before the grand opening, his phone rang, Grace's voice breaking through static. "Say, you need to come to the hospital again. It's Lily." The phone slipped from his hand. The corridor lights flickered faintly as Ethan ran, his footsteps echoing against the sterile floors. Every turn, every breath carried the same thought. Not her, not now. Nurses moved aside when they saw him, whispering, some recognizing his face from TV screens and charity galas. But tonight, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a man terrified of losing someone who made him feel human again. He burst into the room. Lily lay there, eyes closed, face pale, a thin oxygen tube across her nose. Machines hummed rhythmically, and that sound alone kept him standing. Grace stood by the bed, tears streaking down her cheeks. Severe anemia, sir. The doctor said her body gave out again. Ethan's knees nearly buckled. He sat beside Lily and took her cold hand, rubbing it gently between his palms. You promised me, Lily, he whispered. You said you'd be there for the opening. Her eyelids fluttered faintly. I still will be, she murmured weakly. Just maybe a little late. He chuckled softly, though his voice cracked. You always have to get the last word, don't you? She smiled faintly, eyes half open, fragile yet glowing. Did the cafe work out? He hesitated. It's perfect, but it's missing one thing. She blinked, curious. What? You. For a moment, silence filled the room, sacred, heavy, infinite. Then she squeezed his hand weakly. If I can't be there in person, she whispered, just promise me something. Anything. When people walk in, don't just give them food. Give them warmth. Tell them they matter. Her voice trailed off, and Ethan felt tears rising. You have my word. The monitor's beep steadied. The doctor entered, adjusted her full, and nodded reassuringly. She'll recover again, he said, but she needs rest and proper nutrition. Ethan exhaled slowly, pressing her hand to his chest. You're going to get better, Lily. No more working 2 shifts, no more skipping meals. From now on, you just dream, and I'll take care of the rest. Her faint smile lingered as she drifted back to sleep. Grace stepped closer. You really care about her, don't you? Ethan looked at Lily, then back at Grace. She's the only one who ever looked at me and saw a person, not a price tag. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. The next few days, Ethan stayed by her side. He brought her stories about people they'd helped, about new furniture for the cafe, about hope. Lily listened, her weak laughter breaking through the beeps and sighs of machines. When she was discharged, Ethan drove her home himself. Her mother hugged him tightly, tears soaking his expensive coat. You're the reason my daughter's still alive, she said. He shook his head gently. No, she's the reason I am. Weeks passed, and Lily's place finally opened its doors. The first day was quiet. A few curious faces, a handful of children with wide eyes, a few elders who came just to sit where the air smelled of bread and kindness. Lily, still frail, sat at the counter with a steaming cup of tea and a notebook in hand. Ethan watched from a distance. Every time someone entered, she smiled like it was the first good thing she'd seen all day. She called the little corner shelf the thankful table. There, visitors could write anonymous notes, gratitude, regret, confessions, anything. Within a week, it overflowed. People began leaving stories about lost loved ones, forgiven friends, and miracles small enough to fit in a folded page. One night, after closing, Ethan walked in to find her asleep at the counter, head resting on her notebook. He smiled softly and covered her with his jacket. The cafe lights glowed warm and low, golden reflections shimmering across the window where rain traced gentle paths. He looked around and realized that this little place, humble, imperfect, alive, felt more like home than his mansion ever had. He turned toward her and whispered, You did it, Lily. You changed the meaning of wealth. But fate, quiet, unpredictable, and merciless, still had one more chapter to write. The next morning, Lily wasn't at the cafe. Her mother called in tears. She collapsed again. Ethan raced to the hospital, but this time, something was different. Doctors moved faster. Machines sounded sharper. And as he reached the door, He saw her mother sitting outside, clutching that same notebook Lily had carried everywhere. Ethan froze. The hallway lights buzzed faintly above him, painting everything in cold white. Her mother looked up, eyes swollen, voice trembling. "She wanted me to give you this," she whispered, handing him the notebook. He took it with shaking hands. The cover was worn, edges smudged with pencil marks. On the first page, her familiar handwriting curved softly. "If you're reading this, Mr. Moore, thank you for keeping your promise. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. Broken heart." Ethan couldn't read further. Not yet. He sat down on the bench outside her room, the weight of the little notebook heavy in his hands. Inside, beyond the door, monitors still beeped, doctors still moved, but the girl who had taught him to feel again hovered between light and shadow. He opened the next page slowly, his heart pounding. The first words made his eyes blur. "If I don't wake up tomorrow, promise me you'll finish the cafe. Not for me, but for everyone who thinks they're invisible." Taze fell silently onto the ink, smudging her words but not their meaning. He closed his eyes, whispering, "You're not invisible, Lily. You never were." Ethan didn't leave the hospital that night. He sat beside the quiet hum of machines until dawn bled into the windows, washing the walls in pale gold. The notebook lay open on his lap, its pages fluttering like fragile wings. Each line was a piece of Lily's soul, dreams scribbled between pages, prayers written without asking for anything in return. She had written about the people she served at the shelter, about her brother's laugh, her mother's strength. But between those stories, Ethan found something else, letters addressed to him. "You once said money can't buy peace, but it can build it for others. You were right. Sometimes I wonder if you're lonely even in a crowd. If you are, know that I prayed for you." He couldn't breathe. His world, stocks, headlines, gala dinners, suddenly felt absurd. Here was a girl who owned nothing yet gave everything. By morning, Lily's condition worsened. Doctors whispered words Ethan hated. Organ failure, critical, prepare family. He refused to believe it. He paced the corridor like a storm bottled in a suit, his fists clenched, eyes red. Grace arrived, out of breath. "Sir, the press found out. They are asking if the Billionaire is funding another charity case." He turned sharply, eyes blazing. "Don't call her that." Grace's voice softened. "I'm sorry." He exhaled, rubbing his forehead. I can't lose her, Grace. Not after everything she taught me." Inside the room, Lily's mother sat beside her daughter, whispering prayers through trembling lips. Noah stood near the door, clutching a small drawing, a stick figure of Lily holding hands with a man in a suit, beneath a sun that smiled. When Ethan walked in, Noah ran up to him. "She said you'd finish a dream." His voice broke. "We'll finish it together." He sat by Lily's bedside, taking her frail hand in both of his. Her breathing was shallow, but she stirred faintly. "Mr. Moore." "I'm here," he said quickly. "Right here." Her lips curved slightly. "Don't look so sad." "I'm okay." He shook his head. "No, you're not. But you will be." She blinked slowly, gaze drifting toward the window. "Promise me you'll keep the cafe alive. Not fancy, not big, just honest." He swallowed hard. "I promise." Then, after a pause, she whispered something so soft he almost missed it. "Thank you for giving me a dinner I'll never forget." The monitor beeped faster, then steadied again, weak but fighting. Ethan bowed his head, tears falling silently on her hand. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. Sun with small cloud hash. 3 days later, Lily slipped into a coma. Doctors did everything. Machines, drips, whispers of miracle treatments. But her body had given all it could. Still, her face looked peaceful, like someone who'd found her way home. Ethan stayed in that room every night, refusing to leave. The nurses began leaving extra blankets for him, silent witnesses to his transformation. One night, as the city outside sparkled in distant apathy, Ethan read the final page of her notebook. "If one person remembers me with kindness, I've lived enough." He closed the book slowly and whispered, "Everyone will remember you." When the heart monitor finally fell into one long, unbroken tone, Ethan didn't cry at first. He just stood there, motionless, empty, disbelieving. Then, the dam inside broke, and a sound escaped him no one had ever heard before. Not anger, not grief, but something deeper, a soul shattering in silence. Her mother wept quietly, holding Noah close. Grace turned away, tears running down her cheeks. Ethan pressed his forehead to Lily's hand, whispering, "You kept your promise. Lily, now it's my turn." If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Red Hot Hash. A week later, Lily's place reopened, not as a cafe, but as a foundation, a place where children could eat free, mothers could rest, and strangers could find warmth without questions. At the entrance hung a small wooden sign with her handwriting carved into it. Kindness is a currency everyone can afford. People came, hundreds, then thousands. Some brought letters, others brought flowers, all carrying stories of how one girl's compassion had changed their view of the world. And every evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Ethan stood by the window, reading a new note left on the thankful table. One evening, he found one that read, "Because of Lily's story, I fed a hungry man today." He smiled softly, tears glinting in the dim light. "You did it, Lily," he whispered. "Your note broke one heart to heal 100 more." Outside, the city buzzed, louder, faster, but inside, the little cafe glowed warm, alive, eternal. And somewhere between the quiet clink of cups and laughter of strangers, Ethan could still hear her voice, gentle, brave, unforgettable. Months passed, yet Ethan still visited Lily's place every morning before sunrise. He'd unlock the door himself, even though staff were already waiting, and stand silently for a few minutes near the corner table, the very one where she'd once sat sketching her dream on napkins. He'd run a finger over the wooden sofas, tracing faint scratches she'd left behind. They felt like echoes of her laughter. The cafe had grown beyond imagination. Donations flowed in, volunteers arrived daily, and every week they hosted open heart evenings, where people shared stories of how small kindnesses had saved them. Ethan never spoke during those gatherings, but he always sat in the back, listening, a faint smile softening his usually guarded face. One night, after the stories ended, Noah approached the stage, now 11 and taller than before. He held the same notebook, Lily's notebook, worn and patched with tape. "My sister," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "taught me that being poor isn't about money. It's about giving up hope." And she never did. The audience fell silent. Even the candles on the table seemed to listen. "I miss her," Noah continued. "But every time someone comes here to eat, I feel like she's still serving." Ethan looked down, his throat tightening. He remembered the night she had sat across from him at that fancy restaurant, her eyes wide with wonder, saying, "It's beautiful." Yes, she was still serving, only now, to a world far bigger than her own. When the applause ended, Noah walked toward him and whispered, "You promised her you'd keep this place alive. You're doing it." Ethan knelt to meet his eyes. "No, Noah, we're doing it." The boy smiled and handed him the notebook. "She wanted you to finish it. There are empty pages left." Ethan hesitated, staring at the blank sheets. "What should I write?" "Your story," Noah said softly. "She said one day you'd have one worth telling." That night, Ethan sat in the quiet cafe long after everyone had gone. He opened to the last page Lily had written and began his first line beneath haze. "I used to think wealth was measured in zeros. Then I met someone who taught me it's measured in hearts touched." As he wrote, tears slipped down his face, not from pain but from a sense of peace, something pure and owned. Have you ever had someone help you when you didn't deserve it, but they did anyway? Write their name below and say thank you. Maybe they'll feel it, wherever they are. Crescent Moon. A few months later, Ethan received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was shaky but familiar, Lily's mother. "Mr. Moore, I wanted to tell you that we're moving into a small apartment near the cafe. Noah will start school next month thanks to the foundation. Every time I walk past a window and see that sign with her name, I feel her beside me. You've done what no medicine could. You've kept her alive in people's hearts." He read it twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it into the back of the notebook. In the weeks that followed, Lily's place became more than a cafe. It became a refuge. Runaway teens found food. Single mothers found work. Lonely elders found someone to talk to. And above them all, a framed photo of Lily watched silently from the wall. Not as a memorial, but as a reminder that light doesn't die. It simply finds new forms. Ethan began visiting schools and shelters, quietly sponsoring programs for children like her. He never used his name, only the foundations. The media called him the invisible donor, but he didn't care. The only recognition that mattered was in the letters children left on the cafe table, addressed to Miss Lily. One letter from a girl named Ava read, "Dear Miss Lily, I wanted to end my life last year, but then someone took me to your cafe. I saw your picture, read your story, and realized that maybe kindness is proof that love still exists. Thank you for saving me." Ethan folded that note carefully and placed it beside Lily's old napkin note, the one that had started it all. He whispered, "You're still saving lives, Lily, even from the other side." That night, as rain began to fall outside just like that first night they met, he stood by the window again. The reflection of city light shimmered across the glass, and for a moment he imagined her standing beside him. Simple dress, soft smile, eyes full of quiet courage. Now it's your turn. Share one person who changed your life for the better. Comment their name and a short thank you. Let's remind the world that gratitude never goes out of style. Dizzy. The next morning, Grace found him sitting at the same table with 2 cups of coffee, one untouched. "You're still keeping her company," she said softly. He smiled faintly. She never liked people drinking alone. Grace sat across from him, eyes warm. "You've changed, Ethan. The old you wouldn't have sat in a cafe with strangers." He nodded slowly. The old me didn't know what it meant to belong. Outside, a busload of children arrived. School uniforms bright, laughter echoing through the morning air. Ethan stood, straightened his sleeves, and smiled. "Let's open the doors." Lily wouldn't want them to wait. The bell above the door chimed as the first child entered, eyes lighting up at the smell of baked bread. And as Ethan welcomed them in, he realized that the laughter, the noise, the love, was wealth in its truest form. He had finally learned how to be rich. As the months turned to years, Lily's place became more than a dream. It became a heartbeat in the city. People called it the cafe that listens. Strangers would come in burdened and leave lighter, sometimes smiling, sometimes crying, always changed. Every wall held a story, every table confession, and every plate a silent thank you to the girl who'd started it all. Ethan, though older now, still came every morning. He'd sit near the window with his coffee, quietly watching life unfold. The single mother feeding her son, the young couple leaving coins in the tip jar they could barely afford, the man in a suit slipping money into a napkin for someone who needed it more. He had stopped checking stock prices. The empire he'd built ran without him. But the world he cared about now, this small, messy, human world, thrived because of her. Sometimes he caught himself talking to her photo. "You'd laugh if you saw me now," he'd say softly. Ethan Moore, the man who once bought silence, now runs a cafe full of noise. The staff adored him, not for his wealth, but for his humility. He remembered everyone's name, listened to their stories, and never corrected anyone who called him Mr. Ethan instead of Mr. Moore. One evening, as the cafe prepared to close, an elderly man walked in, rain-soaked, trembling slightly. Ethan immediately stood and approached him. "Sir, please, have a seat." The man looked up, voice raspy. "I just needed somewhere warm. I don't have money." Ethan smiled gently. "You don't need it here. Sit." He fetched a bowl of soup himself, placed it before the man, and sat across from him. The stranger looked down at the steaming bowl, his eyes welling up. "It's been a long time since someone treated me like a person." Ethan's heart clenched. Those words echoed his own from years ago. "You are a person," he said softly, "and you're welcome here anytime." The man nodded, tears falling freely. "Then maybe kindness isn't gone after all." Ethan smiled faintly. No, it just needed a place to live. If you believe kindness still exists in this world, type yes below. Let's see how many hearts still carry compassion. Sparkling heart. Later that night, Ethan walked into his office upstairs, a small, modest space above the cafe. On the wall hung Lily's note, framed and preserved. Thank you for treating me like I belong. He touched the frame lightly, whispering, You did more than belong, Lily. You built a home for the rest of us. Grace entered quietly, holding a folder. Ethan, I have something you will want to see. He looked up. What is it? She smiled, eyes glistening. Applications. We've received over 100 requests for new community cafes under Lily's foundation. Other cities want to start their own versions. Ethan leaned back, disbelief flickering into pride. She's spreading again, he murmured. Her kindness, it's contagious. Grace nodded. You should be proud. You made this possible. He shook his head slowly. No, she did. I just followed her handwriting. Grace hesitated, then handed him a second envelope, older, faded. This was found in storage. It's addressed to you. Ethan frowned, opening it carefully. The paper was yellowed with time, the ink soft and looping. It was Lily's writing. Mr. Moore, if you ever read this, it means you kept your promise. Thank you. Don't spend your life mourning me. Live it like I would have, with messy laughter, with open doors, and with a full heart. If you ever doubt your purpose, look around you. My story was never about sadness. It was about transformation. You were part of that story. Now go and write your own. He closed his eyes, holding the letter against his chest. For the first time in years, he didn't cry. He just smiled, the kind of smile born not of joy, but of peace. That night, he hosted one last open-heart evening. The cafe was filled to the brim, laughter, tears, candlelight flickering across hopeful faces. Ethan stood before them, voice steady but soft. Years ago, he began, a girl once wrote me a note at a dinner table. She said thank you for treating her like she belonged. The truth is, she's the one who gave me belonging. The audience was silent, hearts held in their throats. She taught me that wealth isn't what you store in banks, it's what you leave in people. He paused, scanning the crowd, his eyes landing on Noah sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. So if you've ever felt invisible, he continued, remember her story. Remember that even the smallest act, a note, a smile, a bowl of soup, can ripple across lives in ways you'll never see. The audience erupted into applause, not loud, but heartfelt, the kind that felt like prayer. Ethan stood still for a moment, tears glinting under the cafe lights, before whispering into the quiet. Thank you, Lily, for giving me back my humanity. If you've ever felt unseen but kept loving anyway, comments still here. Let's fill the comments with the proof that gentle souls never fade. Rose. That night, as he locked up, he lingered by the door, listening to the hum of life that still echoed within. He whispered to the empty cafe, Good night, Lily, before walking into the soft rain. And for a brief second, just before the door clicked shut, he thought he heard her laughter in the air, like wind chimes through the rain. The next morning dawned quietly, the kind of soft gray that made the city feel half asleep. Ethan walked the familiar path to Lily's place, his steps slower now, thoughtful. When he reached the cafe, the smell of bread and cinnamon greeted him like an old friend. The bell above the door chimed gently as he entered. The staff had already opened. Laughter drifted from the kitchen. Children colored in the corner near the thankful table. It was everything Lily had dreamed of, ordinary magic. Grace approached, holding a tablet. Ethan, you might want to see this. He adjusted his glasses, squinting at the screen. A headline glowed back at him. Lily's Place movement expands to 12 cities worldwide. His lips parted slightly. 12. Grace nodded, smiling. From New York to Mumbai, all following your model. No cost, no judgment, just kindness. Ethan exhaled, his chest rising with something between disbelief and awe. She'd never believed this. Grace laughed softly. Oh, she'd believe it. She always did. He turned toward the window, watching the morning light spill across the floor. Do you ever wonder what she'd say if she could see all this? Grace tilted her head. She'd probably tell you to stop working and eat breakfast. He chuckled, shaking his head. Yeah, she would. Later that afternoon, a school group arrived. The teacher, a woman with kind eyes, approached him shyly. Mr. Moore, could you tell the children about Lily? They are doing a project on kindness. Ethan smiled warmly. I'd be honored. He stood before the dozen curious faces, hands clasped gently. Lily was about your age when I met her. She didn't have much, no fancy clothes, no big house. But she had something most people lose when they grow up. She cared, even when life didn't care back. A little boy raised his hand. Did she know she'd become famous? Ethan smiled sadly. No, she didn't want to be famous. She just wanted people to feel seen. And look around, she succeeded. The children clapped softly, some smiling, others deep in thought. After they left, Ethan lingered by Lily's photo again. You become a legend, kid, he murmured. And legends never really die. If you ever lost someone but still feel their presence guiding you, type always. Let's remind the world that love doesn't vanish, it transforms. Revolving Hearts. That evening, the cafe held a candlelight vigil, the annual day of Lily, celebrated on the anniversary of her passing. The air shimmered with soft gold light. The walls were lined with photos and letters from people around the world who'd been touched by her story. Ethan stood near the window as Grace read aloud a few of the letters. One was from a young man in Brazil. I opened a shelter for kids who sleep on the streets. I named it Lily's home. Every time someone smiles here, I think of her. Another was from a woman in Italy. My father left us with nothing. One day, I saw your video about Lily's note and decided to feed a stranger. That moment changed my heart. By the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the toughest volunteers stood with trembling chins and glistening eyes. Then Grace handed Ethan a small candle. For you, she whispered. He nodded, lighting it carefully before placing it near Lily's photo. For every heart you touched, he whispered. When the vigil ended, the cafe emptied, leaving behind a soft afterglow, a warmth that felt sacred. Ethan lingered at the window, gazing at the reflection of flickering candles. He thought about all the years that had passed, how life had quietly repaired him in ways he didn't notice. He wasn't the same man who once dined in gold-lit isolation. He was someone she'd be proud of, someone human again. Grace walked up beside him. You've done everything she dreamed, Ethan. Maybe it's time you did something for yourself. He smiled faintly. I already did. I found peace. She looked at him for a long moment. You know, I think she'd want you to keep living, not just existing in her memory. He nodded, eyes distant but warm. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time I started writing those blank pages Noah gave me. That night, back in his quiet apartment, Ethan opened Lily's notebook once more. The pages still smelled faintly of old paper and vanilla, her favorite candle scent. He picked up a pen and began writing. Dear Lily, today the cafe reached 12 cities. You should see it, every one of them filled with laughter. You once told me belonging is something you build, not something you find. I think I finally understand that. I'm still building every day. He paused, smiling. And yes, I'm eating breakfast now. You'd be proud. For the first time, his handwriting didn't tremble. If you believe good souls leave ripples that never fade, comment forever. Let's flood this story with hope. Someone scrolling today might need it. Sunflower. As the city lights dimmed outside, Ethan closed a notebook and whispered, Good night, kid. And though no one could see it, a single candle downstairs flickered brighter, just for a second, as if answering back. Spring came quietly that year, soft and green, the kind that made the city bloom with second chances. Morning sunlight spilled into Lily's place, painting golden patterns across the wooden floors. Ethan arrived early, as always, but this time something felt different. The cafe buzzed louder than usual. The scent of warm bread mingled with laughter. Grace greeted him with a bright smile. Big day today, remember? He tilted his head. What day? She laughed. Don't tell me you forgot. The scholarship announcement. The first Lilly Foundation scholars. Ah, yes. The foundation had begun offering full scholarships to underprivileged students pursuing social work, healthcare, or education, the kind of people who'd change lives quietly, like Lily once did. Ethan's heart lifted. Let's make her proud again. When the event began, the cafe overflowed with people. Parents, students, old volunteers, and new faces, all gathered under the same roof that had once held just two strangers from different worlds. A young woman named Ava stepped up to the microphone, holding her acceptance letter. I never met Lily, she began, her voice trembling. But I know her. I see her in every act of kindness that happens here. I see her in Mr. Moore, who turned pain into purpose. And I see her in myself, in every dream that begins from nothing but love. Applause thundered through the cafe. Ethan lowered his gaze, swallowing emotion. Grace nudged him gently. Go on. Say something. He hesitated, then stepped forward. The crowd fell silent. I once thought success meant standing above others, he began, voice soft but sure. But the truest success is standing with others. Lily taught me that. He looked around the room, faces glowing in the light, hope thick in the air. When I first met her, she thanked me for treating her like she belonged. I didn't realize then. She was the one giving me belonging. He paused, smiling faintly through misted eyes. She changed my world with a note. And maybe that's all it takes. One act of kindness, one gentle word, one small moment where someone feels seen. The audience stood in quiet reverence. Even the children sensed it. This wasn't just a speech. It was a prayer disguised as gratitude. He stepped back, nodding to Grace, and the crowd erupted in applause that felt like sunlight. Later that evening, after the celebration ended, Ethan stood alone by the window once more. The city outside glowed with evening warmth, cars humming softly below. Inside, the cafe had returned to its usual calm. Chairs stacked, cups drying by the sink, and the soft hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. He took out Lily's notebook one final time. It was nearly full now, pages filled with stories, reflections, and letters from people touched by her life. He opened to the last blank page and wrote slowly, carefully, Dear Lily, I kept my promise. But somewhere along the way, you kept yours too. You made me remember what it means to live for something beyond myself. If love could be measured in echoes, you'd still be the loudest sound in my life. E. He closed the notebook gently and placed it beside her framed photo at the thankful table. For a long while, he stood there in silence, then whispered, Rest now, kid. Your story's still writing itself. The cafe clock ticked softly behind him, steady, rhythmic, alive. He walked to the door, turned the sign to close, and stepped outside. The evening air was cool, scented with jasmine. Across the street, a young girl offered a sandwich to a homeless man. Ethan smiled. Lily would have loved that. He slipped his hands into his pockets and began walking home under the soft city lights, each step lighter than the last. If this story touched your heart, don't just scroll away. Tap like, not for the writer, not for the ending, but for Lily, for every soul who gives without having much to give. Broken heart sparkles. One click is your way of saying, I felt you, too. And somewhere in the gentle hum of the city, between laughter, rain, and whispered kindness, her story lived on. A poor girl's note had broken a billionaire's heart once. But in that heartbreak, the world found its humanity again.